The first time I heard my son say those words, "Mama, maybe you can just sleep in the garage for now," I swear my heart forgot how to beat. It was like every sacrifice I ever made suddenly didn't matter. And the cruelest part? That garage was attached to the very house I bought with my husband's inheritance. The house I thought would finally bring our family peace. I'm May Henderson. 55 years old, born and raised in Georgia, the kind of woman who still believes a home should feel warm even when life turns cold. I'm not perfect, but I've loved my family the best way I knew how, quietly, fiercely, and all the way through my bones. If you're listening to this, please don't go anywhere. Like, subscribe, and share this story, because what happened in my house might just remind you that love can build a home, but greed can burn it down. Anyway, let me take you back to how all this began. After my husband Charles passed away, the world dimmed. He left me with memories that still whisper through the halls at night, and a modest inheritance, money he worked his entire life to save. The kind of savings a man builds from fixing cars and mending hearts. I didn't know what to do at first. Every penny felt like it still had his fingerprints on it. But our old house was falling apart, and my son Derek kept saying, "Mama, you deserve better. You can't keep living like this." So when the realtor showed me that 2-story brick home on Maple Lane, with the porch swing and the apple tree out front, I could almost see Charles smiling. It felt like a new beginning. I told myself, this is where the grandbabies will visit. This is where peace will live. At first, everything was fine. Derek and his wife Sharon helped me move in. We laughed, cooked together, even prayed over the house like old times. I thought the ache in my chest was finally starting to ease. But peace never stays long when pride walks in the door. Sharon started making little comments. "This place is a lot for you to handle, May. You sure you want to keep paying all these bills by yourself?" At first, I brushed it off. People talk when they don't understand your strength. But soon those comments turned into suggestions. "Maybe you could sign part of the house over to Derek. Just for safety." I remember her saying that while stirring sugar into her coffee, not even looking at me. I laughed it off, said, "Sweetheart, your safety's my safety. We're family." But her eyes told me she wasn't joking. The next few months, I noticed small changes. My name wasn't on some of the mail anymore. Derek started taking calls outside when I walked in the room. And Sharon, she started calling the place her home when guests came over. Something inside me began to ache again. That deep mother's intuition that whispers, something's wrong. One evening, I overheard them talking in the kitchen. "We can't keep waiting," Sharon said. "She'll never hand it over if we don't push a little." "She's my mama," Derek muttered. "Exactly," Sharon snapped. "Then she'll forgive you." I froze in the hallway, my heart banging against my ribs. The walls of that house suddenly felt smaller, like they were listening too. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in my room staring at the framed photo of Charles on the nightstand. His kind eyes looked back at me, almost asking, "May, what did we raise?" I whispered, "I thought I was giving him a home, baby. Not taking one away." But mothers, we always want to believe the best. So I kept quiet. I kept cooking, cleaning, smiling like nothing had changed. Until that Saturday morning. They came into my room, Derek standing tall, shoulders stiff, Sharon behind him with her arms crossed. "Mama," he started, "we've been talking. The bills are too high, and Sharon's pregnant again. We need more space." I nodded slowly, already knowing where this was heading. "So we figured," he continued, "maybe you could use the garage for a while. It's temporary." He said it so calmly, like asking me to borrow a spoon. My tongue felt heavy. "The garage?" I asked. Sharon jumped in. "We'll fix it up nice, May. You'll have your own space, privacy, everything. It's just, well, the kids need the bedrooms." The world went quiet for a moment. Even the clock on the wall seemed ashamed to tick. I looked at my son, my baby boy, the same child who once cried in my lap because his bike chain broke. And now here he was, telling me to move into a garage like I was some unwanted guest. I tried to speak, but my voice trembled. "Derek, this is our house. I bought it, for all of us." He wouldn't meet my eyes. You used Dad's money, Mama. His inheritance. That was meant for the family. And I am the family. Those words sliced deeper than any knife. Sharon added softly, like sugar over poison. We're just trying to make it fair. Fair. That word kept echoing long after they left the room. Fair that I buried my husband alone. Fair that I spent months packing and paying and praying just to make this house a home. Fair that now my own blood wanted me gone. I sat there for hours, numb. And when I finally stood up and looked out the window, I saw Derek in the driveway, measuring the garage. Right then, I realized something had shifted in me. A mother's heart can bend, but it doesn't break easy. I didn't know how yet, but I promised myself one thing. If they wanted me in that garage, they'd soon learn what happens when you underestimate a woman who built a home from nothing. Because love may make you gentle, but betrayal teaches you how to stand. The morning after that conversation, I woke up to the sound of laughter downstairs. Not the kind that warms your heart, but the kind that makes you feel left out of your own home. Derek and Sharon were having breakfast with their little girl, Ava. I could hear plates clinking, cartoons playing in the background, and Sharon saying, "Sweetie, tell Daddy what you dreamed about last night." Their joy should have made me smile, but instead, it made me ache. Because for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like part of that picture anymore. As I sat on the edge of my bed, I remembered the promises Derek once made to me. He was 15, wearing his father's old jacket, too big for his small frame, and he said, "Mama, when I grow up, you'll never struggle again. I'll take care of you the way Daddy took care of us." And Lord knows, I believed him. Because that boy had a heart too big for his own good, or so I thought. When Charles died, Derek was only 17. I remember holding his hand at the funeral, both of us standing in the rain. He squeezed my fingers and whispered, "It's okay, Mama. You got me now." That memory used to comfort me. Now it haunted me. I walked downstairs quietly that morning, careful not to interrupt their breakfast. But when I entered the kitchen, Sharon's smile tightened. "Oh, good morning, May," she said, her tone too sweet to trust. "We already started eating. Didn't think you'd be up this early." I forced a smile. Couldn't sleep too long. Old bones and early mornings don't mix well. Derek looked up from his plate. "There's toast if you want, Mama." But Sharon made it with almond butter. You know, trying to be healthy. I nodded and reached for a plate, but Sharon's hand got there first. "Oh, sorry," she said, sliding the toast to her side. "Ava's still hungry." I stared at the empty spot on the counter and whispered, "It's okay, baby. I'll just make myself something later." But deep down, something inside me started to break, not from hunger, but from being invisible in the home I'd built. Later that week, Derek came home late from work. I was sitting in the living room sewing a tear in Ava's dress. He sat across from me, rubbing his temples. "Mama, you don't have to do that. Sharon can buy her a new one." "Baby," I said softly, "I'm not sewing because it's torn. I'm sewing because it's hers." He didn't answer. Just stared at the TV. That night, after everyone went to bed, I stood outside on the porch, the same porch Charles always wanted. The moonlight hit the apple tree out front, and I remembered the day we planted it. Derek was 7 then. He kept asking if apples grew faster when you talked to them. Maybe, Charles told him. Everything grows better when it's loved. And now, the house was full of silence. Love had become something we used to have. A few days later, Sharon invited some of her friends over. They were laughing in the dining room, sipping wine, and talking loud enough for me to hear. "It must be nice having your own house so young," one of them said. "Oh, it's our house," Sharon replied proudly. "Derek and I are making it our home. My name never came up. Not once." So I walked upstairs, shut my door, and pressed my hand against my chest to stop it from shaking. It wasn't jealousy I felt, it was grief. Grief for a son who had started to forget where he came from. The next morning, I tried to talk to him. I caught him before work, holding his coffee mug by the door. "Derek," I said gently, "can we talk for a minute?" He sighed, checking his watch. "Yeah, what's wrong?" I feel like I'm walking on eggshells lately. Like maybe Sharon doesn't want me around." He frowned. "Mama, that's not true. She loves you. You're just sensitive sometimes." Sensitive. That word stung more than he knew. "Maybe," I said, "but I know when something's changing. And this house," he interrupted, "is fine. We just have to adjust, that's all." He leaned over, kissed my cheek, and said, "Don't worry so much. You raised me right, remember? I'll always take care of you." Then he walked out the door, leaving his promise floating in the air like smoke. But promises don't keep you warm when the people who made them start growing cold. That night, Sharon came into my room without knocking. She stood by the doorway, her arms folded. "May, I just wanted to let you know, my mom might visit next week. So if you could keep your things tidy, I'd appreciate it." "My things tidy?" I repeated slowly. "Yeah. You know, your room's near the guest bath, and she's particular about smells." I blinked. "Smells?" She smiled politely, her tone dipped in honey. "Don't take it the wrong way. Older folks just have certain scents. It's natural." I bit the inside of my cheek, holding back tears. When she left, I sat down on my bed and whispered, "Lord, please, don't let me lose my grace." But that night, I couldn't sleep again. I walked through the house in the dark, the quiet creaks under my feet felt like the house itself was sighing. In the hallway, I stopped by Derek's room. The door was cracked open. Inside, I saw Sharon asleep on her side, and Derek lying awake, staring at the ceiling. For a moment, I wanted to walk in and remind him of who he used to be, that little boy who cried when I worked double shifts, who used to kiss my hand and say, "You're my hero, Mama." But I didn't. I just stood there, watching him, wondering if he could still feel me praying for him. When I finally went back to bed, I whispered to the darkness, "Charles, I'm trying, baby. But I don't know how much longer I can live in a house that doesn't want me." I didn't know it then. But those words would soon come true in ways I never imagined. Because what happened next would break the last piece of my heart still holding on. It started small. So small I told myself I was imagining it. One morning, I came downstairs and noticed my coffee mug was missing. It wasn't just any mug, it was the one Charles gave me on our 10th anniversary. White porcelain, with "Forever Yours" painted in faded gold. I used it every day since the day he died. I searched the cabinets, the sink, even the dishwasher. It was gone. When Derek came home that evening, I asked about it gently. "Baby, did you see my mug? The one with the gold writing?" He didn't even look up from his phone. "Oh, that old thing. Sharon probably tossed it. It was chipped." I stood there for a second, frozen. "Tossed it?" I repeated softly. "It was your daddy's gift." "Mema," he sighed, "it's just a cup." Just a cup. But it wasn't. It was a memory. A promise. A piece of my life I wasn't ready to throw away. After that, little things started to disappear. A photo frame, a crocheted blanket, my old Bible with the torn cover. Every time I asked, Sharon had an explanation. "Oh, I thought it was clutter. It didn't match the decor. We're just trying to keep the place tidy." Tidy. That word started to sound like erase. I tried to keep my peace. I told myself, "May, don't make a fuss. Maybe it's just how young folks are nowadays." But deep down, I knew something was shifting, not just in the house, but in my son's heart. One afternoon, I was sitting in the living room folding laundry when I overheard them talking in the kitchen. "Your mom's gotta stop leaving her stuff everywhere," Sharon whispered. "Yeah, I know," Derek answered quietly. "I'll talk to her. It's just, this house feels crowded. Like she's always around. I can't relax." I stopped folding. The shirt in my hand felt like it weighed 100 pounds. Crowded? In a house with 5 bedrooms? That evening, I stayed in my room until I heard them both go upstairs. Then I stepped out into the hallway and looked around. The air felt different. Like the house was starting to breathe someone else's rhythm. In the days that followed, I noticed more changes. Sharon started locking the pantry. She said it was to keep Ava from snacking too much. But every time I wanted to cook something, I had to ask for permission. One night, I walked in to find Sharon rearranging the family pictures on the wall. My wedding photo was gone. The space where Charles' smile once lived was now filled with a framed quote, "Home is where new beginnings grow." I asked her, trying to keep my voice calm, "Sharon, where's the picture that was here?" "Oh," she said, not even looking up, "it didn't go with the color scheme." I packed it away safely. Packed away. That's what I had become, something to store, something that didn't belong anymore. Then came the dinners. At first, I thought I'd misheard. I'd come downstairs and find the table already cleared, dishes washed, leftovers cold on the stove. When I asked, Sharon smiled and said, "Oh, we thought you ate earlier, May. You always go to your room so fast." I didn't argue. I just nodded and reheated the food quietly, sitting alone at the table that was supposed to bring us together. The silence around me felt loud. Even the walls seemed to echo things I didn't want to hear. Sometimes, Ava would peek into my room. "Grandma," she whispered one night, "Mommy says you're tired a lot." I smiled weakly. "Grandma's just resting, baby." She climbed onto my bed and cuddled close. "I like when you're here." That tiny sentence felt like the only warmth left in that house. But warmth doesn't last long when cold hearts start running the home. One Sunday morning, I came down dressed for church. My best blue dress, the one Charles always said made my eyes shine. Derek was sitting on the couch, scrolling his phone. Sharon was painting her nails. "You're coming to service?" I asked hopefully. "We're skipping today," Sharon said. "Ava's tired, and we just want a lazy morning." I nodded. "All right, I'll go alone then." As I reached for my purse, Derek looked up for the first time and said, "Mama, maybe you should start going to the early service. That way, you're not rushing around while we're still trying to sleep in." I paused. "Oh." I didn't realize I was disturbing anyone. "It's not that," he said quickly. "It's just, we all need our routines, you know? Routines. Boundaries. Space. New words that didn't exist in our home before Sharon arrived." That afternoon, when I came back from church, I saw a folded piece of paper on the counter. It was a note in Sharon's handwriting. "Please remember to rinse your dishes after use. Trying to keep the kitchen organized. Thanks, smiley face." I stood there staring at that smiley face until my own smile disappeared. Every small thing, the missing mug, the rearranged photos, the friendly notes, they were tiny cracks. But cracks don't stay small. Sooner or later, the whole wall gives in. That night, I prayed again. "Lord, I know I said I wanted peace in this house. But maybe I asked for the wrong kind of peace." I laid in bed, listening to laughter coming from downstairs, laughter that used to include me. I turned over, hugging my pillow tight, whispering to the dark, "If this is what love looks like now, I don't know if I still recognize it." But the truth was, this was only the beginning. Because the next thing my son said to me, the words that came from his own mouth, would break me more than silence ever could. He stood there in the doorway, shoulders tense, his eyes colder than I ever thought a son's eyes could be toward his mama. "Mom," he said, voice flat as winter air, "you don't pay the bills here. You can't just do whatever you want." For a second, I thought I'd misheard him. I blinked, hoping he'd laugh and say he was joking. But Marcus didn't laugh. He just crossed his arms and looked at me like I was some stranger who'd wandered into his home uninvited. I swallowed hard. "Marcus, baby, what are you saying? This house." He cut me off. "Yeah, you bought it, I know. But it's our home now. You said it yourself, you wanted us to live here as a family." Those words, they sounded so familiar, but they didn't feel like my boy's voice anymore. There was something else in it. Pride, anger, maybe even shame. I looked over at his wife, Tasha, sitting on the couch, pretending to scroll through her phone, but I could see the corner of her mouth twitch up. That tiny smirk told me everything. I steadied my voice. "Marcus, all I asked was that y'all don't leave the kitchen a mess after dinner. I ain't complaining, I just—" "Mom," he said again, louder this time, "you're acting like this is your house. It's not. That word, not, hit me harder than I expected. Not my house. Not my home. Not my family anymore, maybe. I stared at the walls I'd painted, the couch I'd saved for months to buy, and the clock above the mantel, the one my husband and I picked out years ago. Everything in that room came from the money my husband left behind. And now, my own son was telling me I didn't belong here. He walked past me toward the kitchen, brushing my shoulder as if I were invisible. I could smell the cologne I used to buy him for his birthdays. That same scent now stung my eyes more than comforted me. I whispered, "Marcus, you promised me. You said I'd never have to struggle again. You said." He turned back, his voice sharp. "And I meant it, Mom. But you can't keep controlling everything. You had your time. My time." I stood frozen in that doorway, wondering when love started needing a schedule, when a mother's time expired. The silence after that was heavy. Even the house seemed to hold its breath. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. Because deep down, I still hoped he'd come back later, apologize, tell me he was just stressed. But as I walked back to my room, the walls echoed his words, "You don't pay the bills here." Later that night, I heard them laughing in the living room. Not cruelly, but carelessly, the kind of laughter that belongs to people who don't realize they're breaking something sacred. I sat on the edge of my bed, holding the picture of my husband. "John," I whispered, "our boy's changing. I don't know how to reach him anymore." Outside, the rain started tapping against the window. I closed my eyes and tried to remember the last time Marcus looked at me with love instead of irritation. It felt like a lifetime ago. I thought about all the nights I'd stayed up when he was little, waiting for him to come home from basketball practice, making sure he ate, making sure he was safe. Now he was the one locking doors, keeping me out. And somewhere between those thoughts, I remembered something my husband once said. "May, when people forget your worth, don't remind them with your pain, remind them by standing tall." I breathed deep, wiped my tears, and tried to find that strength again. But it's hard to stand tall when your own son makes you feel small in the home you built with love. I stood, walked to the hallway, and peeked into the living room. Tasha noticed me, leaned closer to Marcus, and whispered something. He turned to me, irritated. "Mom, do you need something?" I shook my head slowly. "No, baby. Just making sure you're good." He sighed, looked away, and muttered, "We're fine." And right there, something inside me cracked. Because fine doesn't sound like family. There was so much I wanted to say, about gratitude, about respect, about the cost of forgetting who raised you. But all I could do was whisper, "Good night," and walk away before my voice broke. As I closed my bedroom door, my heart whispered something else. Maybe love don't always sound like love. Sometimes it sounds like silence. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. The rain had stopped, but my thoughts wouldn't. Every word Marcus said replayed like a broken record. "You don't pay the bills here. You don't pay the bills here." I reached for my phone, scrolled through old photos, him at graduation, his first car, that goofy smile when he made me breakfast for Mother's Day. What happened to that boy? And before I drifted off, I thought to myself, if you're listening right now, please like, subscribe, and share this story, and drop your birth year in the comments. If we're the same age, I've got a little surprise waiting for you there. Because sometimes, sharing a story like this might just help another mama feel less alone. By morning, things felt even colder. Marcus barely looked at me when he left for work. Tasha made her coffee without a word. I tried to smile anyway. "Morning, sweetheart." She glanced at me and said, "Marcus likes oat milk in his now. You might wanna remember that." Her tone wasn't rude, but it was sharp enough to draw blood if you listened close. When the door finally shut behind them, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the untouched cups, and whispered to myself, maybe this house really ain't mine anymore. And that's how that day ended, with quiet, invisible heartbreak. The kind that doesn't scream or shout, but sinks deep enough that even your reflection looks like a stranger. I didn't know it yet. But the worst was still coming. That night started like any other, the kettle humming soft in the kitchen, plates clinking, the TV low in the corner, but by the time the dessert was set down, the room felt like a battlefield waiting for orders. I had made Marcus's favorite, pot roast slow-cooked until the meat fell apart, carrots caramelized just right, and his daddy's old mashed potatoes that he'd always teased me about because I never measured the milk. I put the dishes on the table slowly, watching their faces as they looked in. For a moment, Tasha smiled like she used to when we first met. Then something shifted. "May, this is a lot of food," Tasha said, picking at the salad before even taking a bite. "Maybe next time keep it simple. We've got a lot going on." Her voice sounded casual, but the edge under it felt deliberate. Marcus didn't say anything. He just kept looking at his phone, tapping his thumb over the screen like a drum. "Baby, I cooked for us. Come eat," I said, trying to make my voice warm even though my hands wanted to shake. He sighed, set his phone down, and forced that polite smile he used with guests. "Thanks, Mama. Looks good." But his eyes slid away before the words finished, and that's when the little look started, the exchanged glances between him and Tasha, small conspiracies I could feel like cold wind. We started eating. The first few minutes the air was polite, the clatter of cutlery the only sound. I filled my plate and asked about work, the usual, trying to keep the conversation light. Tasha answered and then laughed a little too loud at something on her phone. Marcus gave a half laugh that didn't reach his mouth. Then, in the middle of a bite, Tasha looked up and said, "May, we were thinking, the house could use a new layout. Maybe the living room and dining could be switched, and we could take down some of these older pieces." I felt my fork still. "These came from your grandfather's house," I said. "Your daddy and I picked that table out together." She waved a hand. "I know, but they look heavy. It's just, modernizing could open things up." Her words were soft, but they had teeth. "Why would we change things?" Marcus asked, but his voice didn't sound like he was on my side. It sounded like he was trying not to start anything. I swallowed. "Because this is our home. We all live here." I tried to make it gentle. "I just want everyone to feel comfortable." Tasha set her fork down slowly. "Comfortable. Right." She looked at Marcus like she expected him to say something decisive. "And if we're making changes, maybe we should consider who's contributing the most. It's only fair." Her tone made my skin crawl. "Contributing?" I asked, even though I knew what she meant. "The inheritance. The money Charles had left. The house I'd bought with both love and trembling hands." Marcus shifted in his chair. "It's not about what Mama bought, Mom," he said, using the cold title again. "It's about how things are handled going forward." "Handled?" I repeated. "Like how I handled buying this house so you didn't have to sleep on your friend's couch when you lost your job. Like how I handled paying for the repairs. Like how I handled waking up every night worrying about you." They both looked at me like I'd said something embarrassing. Tasha's laugh came out thin. "May, no one's denying that you did things. But we also have responsibilities now. Bills, a baby on the way, we can't keep everything the same because it's comfortable for you." "A baby on the way," I repeated softly. The words stung less than they should have. I tried to find the tenderness I'd felt when I first saw Marcus's swollen little fist waving in that hospital room years ago, but instead I felt a slow sinking. "Maybe you could think about selling some of the things that aren't necessary," Tasha continued. "We could use the money to help with renovations. Sell the family heirlooms. Sell the things that carried our history." I felt a hot flash rise in me, the kind that makes teeth ache. "I will not be told to sell the house my husband left for his family," I said. My voice came out steadier than I felt. This house was never meant to be pawned off to pay for someone's new tastes. Marcus, my son, slammed his palm on the table. The plates jumped. "Mama, you're making this difficult. We're offering practical solutions. You're being selfish." Selfish. That word fell like ice. I'd given away dinners, hours, sleep, my dignity, and still I was selfish. The room felt like it was shrinking. I could see the neighbors' light through the curtains, their normal lives uninterrupted. Tasha stood, her chair scraping back loud as thunder. "Fine," she said. "If you're going to be stubborn about it, maybe you need to really think about what's important." She walked out of the room like she had somewhere better to be. Marcus followed her without looking back, leaving the room thick with the echoes of the slammed chair. I sat there in the wreckage of what should have been a simple family meal. My chest felt hollow, like a bird had been released and left an empty place inside me. For a moment I considered leaving then too, walking out and slamming my own door for good. But where would I go? The thought of the garage I'd been asked to sleep in flashed in my mind, the patchwork blanket waiting. I pictured myself curling into that small cold space, the smell of oil and dust pressing in. My knees gave, and I pushed back my chair, the legs screeching in the same way the evening had. I walked to the sink and began rinsing dishes as if rinsing could wash away the sting. Every clink echoed the argument back to me. I couldn't help the tears that came, quiet at first, then spilling faster, because grief isn't only for the dead. It's also for the life you thought you'd have with the living who leave you behind. When I dried my hands and went to my room, I passed their door. It was closed, laughter inside muffled and normal. I sat on the edge of my bed and held my face in my hands. I thought of Charles and how he'd always shook his head when I worried too much. May, I whispered into my hands, you did what you had to do. You did for them. Don't let their words take your home. That night the house felt colder than it had the day I moved in. The portrait of Charles on the mantel watched me like a witness, steady, kind. I pressed my fingers to the frame and promised myself something I didn't know I had left. I would not leave this house because someone else demanded comfort over gratitude. But I also knew then that what came next would demand more than promises. That argument had shown me how deep the fracture was. And fractures, if not tended, only widen. I lay awake listening for the quiet sound of their breathing, and for the first time I truly wondered what would happen when family forgets the shape of its own heart. The next morning, the sun came up soft and gold across the curtains, but it couldn't warm the heaviness in the house. I moved around the kitchen quietly, pouring coffee into the same chipped mug I'd used for years. Marcus and Tasha were already sitting at the table, whispering. They stopped when I walked in. That silence told me more than any words could. Morning, I said, forcing a smile. Want some breakfast? Tasha looked up first. No, thank you, she said, and her voice had that sweet politeness that always came before something sharp. Marcus didn't look up at all. He just cleared his throat and said, Mama, we need to talk. Those 5 words. Always the beginning of something that can't be undone. I sat down slowly, folding my hands in front of me. All right, son. I'm listening. He rubbed his palms together. He glanced at Tasha, this living situation isn't working anymore. I felt a small laugh escape before I could stop it. Living situation? I repeated. Baby, this is my home. Ain't no situation about it. Mama, please, he said, lowering his voice, trying to sound reasonable. You know we love you, but we need our own space. Things are tense, and Tasha's pregnant. She needs peace. I looked at her. She stared right back, no shame in her eyes. Peace? I said. Child, I've been nothing but peace since you moved in here. Tasha sighed. It's just not healthy. The energy, the old things, the constant memories. We're trying to build our own life. Marcus nodded, and my stomach dropped. So what are you saying? I asked quietly. He hesitated, his eyes darting to the window, anywhere but me. Maybe you could stay somewhere else for a while. Just until things settle down. The mug in my hand felt heavier. You mean leave my own house? No, Mama, he said quickly, just take some time away. Visit Aunt Delilah or maybe stay with a friend. I laughed again, but it didn't sound like me this time. You think I got people lining up to take me in? You think at 56 I can just pack a bag and start over? Tasha shifted in her seat. You don't have to make it sound dramatic. We're just asking for space. I turned to my son, my only child, the boy I'd rocked to sleep through fevers and bad dreams. Marcus, where do you expect me to go? He didn't answer. He just pressed his lips together and stared at the table. And that silence, that heavy, shameful silence, broke something inside me. You're forgetting something, I said, my voice trembling. This house was bought with your father's inheritance. Every brick, every nail, every tile, paid for with the money he left behind for his family. For you. For me. For us. Mama. No. I said, slapping the table hard enough to make the spoons rattle. Don't you mama me. You think this place exists because of your paycheck? Because of what she brought? Tasha crossed her arms. We're not trying to fight. We're just trying to live our lives without feeling like we're being watched all the time. Watched? I said, stunned. Girl, I barely see y'all. You hide in that room like I'm a ghost. Marcus exhaled, pushing his chair back. This is exactly what I mean. You take everything as an attack. Because it is an attack, Marcus, I said, tears stinging my eyes. It's an attack on everything your father and I worked for. You talk about space. Baby, I gave you all the space in the world when your daddy died. I let you grieve how you needed to. I gave you years to find yourself. I waited while you figured out who you were. And this is how you repay me. Tasha stood. Enough. This back and forth isn't helping. If you can't respect the boundaries in this house, maybe you should consider. Marcus cut in, his voice sharp, louder than I'd ever heard. Tasha, stop. He turned to me. Mama, if you want to stay here, you can. But you'll have to move your things into the garage. The world stopped for a moment. The garage. I repeated softly. He nodded, not meeting my eyes. It's temporary. Just till we figure things out. I felt my knees weaken, my breath coming shallow. You want your mother to sleep in the garage? Mama, it's clean. I'll move some things around, make it comfortable. Comfortable? I whispered. Boy, I raised you better than this. That's where I kept your father's old tools. That's where the paint cans are. You want me to live with the dust and the spiders while you sit in the house I bought? He flinched, but he didn't take it back. And Tasha, she just looked relieved, like a problem had finally been solved. I stared at them both, my heart breaking slow. You really mean this? Marcus swallowed hard. Mama, please don't make this harder than it already is. Something inside me went still. The part of me that used to beg, to reason, to hope, it went silent. I see, I said quietly. Then I'll pack my things. Tasha smiled faintly, as if she thought that was maturity. But what she didn't know was that when a mother packs her things, she packs her love right along with them. I stood up. The chair scraped against the floor, the sound long and tired. I walked past them without another word, down the hallway, into the room that used to hold laughter. My hands trembled as I folded my clothes into the old suitcase Charles used to take on business trips. The smell of cedar still clung to it. Every item I placed inside felt like another goodbye, to the woman I was, to the family I thought I had, to the dream of peace I'd bought with love and inheritance. When I was done, I stood there for a long time. Then I whispered to myself, if this is what respect looks like now, I'd rather sleep beside the tools that built this home. Outside, I could hear Marcus moving things in the garage, the scrape of boxes, the shuffle of old shelves. Preparing my exile like it was some kind of favor. I wiped my eyes and walked out slowly, my suitcase bumping along behind me. The air outside was cooler than I remembered, heavy with the smell of rain. I looked up at the sky, then at the garage door standing half open, light flickering inside. Lord, I murmured, give me strength not to hate the child I gave life to. As I stepped inside, I could see the outline of old memories, the rusted bike Marcus used to ride, the toolbox Charles kept in the corner, a folded top where I'd once kept holiday decorations. It wasn't a home. It was a reminder. I sat down on an overturned crate, the weight of it all pressing into me. Tears slipped down my face, quiet and hot. I didn't know it yet, but that night was going to change everything, because once a mother learns to survive without her child's love, she becomes something stronger than anyone ever expected. And that was the beginning of my strength, born right there in that cold, lonely garage. That first night in the garage was colder than I expected. The concrete floor held the chill even through the blanket I laid out. The smell of oil, dust, and old wood hung in the air like memories that refused to leave. I sat there in the dim light from a single bulb, staring at the suitcase beside me, half open, half unwilling to believe this was real life. You know, sometimes pain doesn't come from what people say. It comes from what they don't. Marcus never came to check on me. Not once. I heard laughter from the kitchen. Tasha's voice carried through the walls, light and easy, like she hadn't just pushed me out of my own home. Then Marcus's deeper tone joined hers, soft, careful, and almost happy. I laid down on the cot he'd dragged out there for me, staring up at the rafters. The wood creaked every now and then, like it was trying to whisper, "You don't belong here." I thought about Charles, how he'd spent hours in this very space, fixing the lawnmower, building shelves, humming to old blues music while I brought him lemonade. He'd look up, grin, and say, "May, this house can outlive us both." And here I was, outlived by the walls instead of by love. The night crawled slow. Every sound felt louder, the pipes in the house, the hum of the fridge, the laughter fading into soft silence. And then I heard it. Marcus locking the back door. That click hit harder than any slap could. He'd locked me out. Out of my own kitchen. Out of the life I'd built brick by brick. I turned my face toward the pillow, and I let the tears come. I didn't sob, I'd done enough of that when Charles passed. This time, it was quiet, steady, like rain that had been waiting too long to fall. Morning came early, all gold and grey. My body ached from the hard cot, my breath puffed white in the cold. I sat up slow, wrapped my shawl tighter, and made my way to the side door. It was still locked. I knocked. No answer. I waited, listening. Then footsteps, quick, annoyed. Tasha opened the door just a crack, her hair wrapped, her face half done with makeup. "Yes," she said. I smiled weakly. "Just wanted to make some coffee." She sighed, stepping aside like it was charity. "Fine. Just clean up after yourself." I walked past her quietly, my heart heavy with the kind of pain that don't make noise anymore. The kitchen looked different in the morning light, her cups, her little plants on the windowsill, her pink dish towel hanging where mine used to be. I brewed my coffee slow, holding the mug close to my chest like it was the only warm thing left. When Marcus came down, his eyes avoided mine. "Morning," he said, pretending to look for something in the fridge. "Morning," I replied. My voice didn't even sound like me. We stood there in that silence again, the kind that used to be filled with Sunday pancakes and laughter. Now it was just air and guilt between us. Finally, I said softly, "You remember when you were 10, and the storm hit? You were so scared, you ran right into this kitchen crying. I told you nothing bad could ever happen here because this was our safe place." He froze, his shoulders stiff. "Mama, please." "No," I said gently. "I just need you to know that even when I'm in that garage, I still see you as my son. But I'm learning something. You can love somebody and still realize they don't know how to love you back right now." He turned around, tears in his eyes. "It's not like that." I smiled faintly. "It's exactly like that, baby. You just don't see it yet." I took my coffee and went back to the garage. Closed the door softly behind me. And as I sat there again, surrounded by the tools, the boxes, the smell of dust and time, I realized something. This wasn't the end of me. It was the beginning of the woman I had forgotten I was. I found a notebook in one of the drawers, old, half-filled with Charles' measurements and sketches. I flipped it open, found a blank page, and started writing. I didn't even know what I was writing at first. Just words that felt like breath after drowning. By afternoon, I had pages full of everything I'd never said out loud. The hurt. The hope. The little pieces of myself I'd buried under motherhood and mourning. Then something strange happened. When I read the words back, they didn't sound like pain anymore. They sounded like power. Like freedom trying to find its voice again. Later that evening, Marcus came to the door. "Mama," he said softly, "you okay out here?" I looked up from the notebook. "I'm fine, baby." He nodded, hands in his pockets. "Dinner's ready if you want to come in." "I'll eat later," I said. "You two go ahead." He hesitated, then left. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and whispered to myself, it's okay to start over, even if it's in the same place. Because maybe that's what healing really looks like. Not some big apology, not some fancy ending. Just the quiet moment when you realize your peace doesn't depend on anyone else opening their door. And to everyone listening right now, if you've ever felt pushed out of a space you helped build, I want you to remember this. Peace can live anywhere, even in a cold garage, even in your own loneliness. If you're still listening, please like, subscribe, and share this story. And drop your birth year in the comments. Baby, I want to see how many of us learned to start over the hard way. Because maybe, just maybe, we've all been sleeping beside the tools that once built our strength. The rain had been steady all night, drumming against the tin roof like a reminder that the world outside still moved on, even when your heart didn't. I'd gotten used to the quiet out here in that cold garage, just me, a thin blanket, and the sound of Marcus's laughter echoing faintly from the house that used to feel like mine. Sometimes I'd whisper a prayer under my breath, not asking for much. Just strength to make it through another day. Just peace. The kind of peace my husband always carried in his voice when he'd tell me, "Don't let the world harden you, baby. Stay soft, even when they don't deserve it." That morning, I woke up to silence, not even the wind. Then I heard it. Knock. Knock. Soft. Hesitant. Like the person on the other side was scared of the answer. I sat up slowly, pulling my sweater tight around me. My hands trembled as I reached for the handle, and when I opened the door, my breath caught. There she was, my granddaughter, little Nia. Barefoot, wearing her pink pajama set with tiny stars on it, her hair all wild from sleep. She looked up at me, her big brown eyes wide with confusion. "Grandma, why are you sleeping out here?" Her voice was small, like a question she was afraid to ask. And right then, my heart broke all over again. I knelt down beside her, brushing a curl from her forehead. "Sweetheart, sometimes grown-ups make mistakes. I'm just giving your daddy some space." She frowned. "But it's cold. Daddy got your room. You supposed to sleep in the warm." I tried to smile, but my throat closed. From the kitchen window, I saw movement, Marcus's wife, staring at us. Her face was unreadable. She disappeared before I could say a word. "Nia," I whispered, "go back inside, baby. Grandma's fine out here." She shook her head stubbornly. "No, you not. You look sad." She stepped inside the garage and sat down beside me on the old folded quilt. Her tiny hands clutched mine, her skin soft and warm. We sat there like that, me and that child, listening to the rain, saying nothing. That moment was too pure, too honest. And when she finally got up to go, she turned back and said the words that would change everything. "I'm gonna tell Daddy he gotta let you back inside." My chest tightened. I wanted to stop her, but she ran off before I could speak. I stood there frozen, staring at the door swinging open, the wind pushing it like time urging me forward. That evening, I heard voices. Not whispers this time, but real voices, low, urgent, sharp. Marcus and his wife. Their argument drifted through the crack of the garage door, carried by the wind. "Why would she say that to Nia?" his wife snapped. "You know she's just trying to make you feel guilty." "I read Mom's journal," Marcus said quietly. The words hit me like thunder. "My journal." I pressed my ear closer. "She wrote everything," he continued. "How she worked 3 jobs when Dad died, how she sold her ring to buy me my first car, how she never bought herself a new coat for 10 years. There was silence. Then I heard his wife scoff. "You're letting her manipulate you again, Marcus." He didn't answer. The silence stretched, heavy and deep. I backed away from the door, heart pounding. That old notebook, I'd left it in a box in the closet before they moved my things. I never meant for him to see it. Part of me wanted to cry. Another part whispered, maybe this is how God softens a heart, through the truth they weren't ready to face. Later that night, I heard slow footsteps on the gravel. The door creaked open. Marcus stood there, eyes red, face tired, holding something in his hands, my journal. He didn't say a word. Just looked at me. And for the first time in months, his eyes weren't cold. I didn't move. I couldn't. He took a shaky breath. "Mom, can we talk tomorrow?" My lips parted, but no sound came out. I just nodded. He placed the journal on the workbench and turned to leave. Before the door closed, he hesitated. I shouldn't have let it get this far. Then he walked away. I sat there long after he was gone, staring at that old worn book like it held a life I'd almost forgotten. And in that silence, I whispered to myself, maybe the storm's finally breaking. The morning was heavy with fog, the kind that makes the world feel smaller and your heart feel bigger. I sat on the edge of the garage cot, hands wrapped around my coffee mug, staring at the faint outline of the house I had bought with my husband's inheritance. I could hear movement inside, the clatter of dishes, low voices, the shuffle of someone pacing. Then I heard a knock. Slow. Hesitant. Different from Nia's, heavier, full of tension. I didn't answer at first. Something told me to wait. But when the knock came again, I rose slowly and opened the door. Marcus stood there, eyes red, face pale, hands shaking slightly. He looked nothing like the boy I raised, he looked older, burdened, and broken. "Mom," he began, his voice barely a whisper. "Marcus," I said softly, stepping aside. "Come in. It's cold out here." He hesitated, then stepped into the garage. His eyes scanned the tools, the crates, the makeshift cot, and I could see it all in him. Guilt. Shame. Recognition. I read the journal, he stammered, holding his head low. "I saw everything. What you did for me, for us, and I never." I lifted a hand gently. "Shush, don't. Just speak from your heart." He took a deep breath and dropped to his knees in front of me. "Mama, I've been so wrong. I thought I was protecting my life, my family, but I pushed you out of the home you built with your own hands. I was selfish. I was blind. I don't deserve you." Tears filled his eyes, streaming down his face as he choked on the words. The boy who had once promised he'd always take care of me was finally showing the man he had become, raw, remorseful, and human. I looked at him, my chest tight, my own tears threatening to fall. "Marcus, listen," I said softly. "I've loved you since the day you were born. That love didn't leave when you made mistakes. It didn't leave when the house turned cold, when words were sharp, or when hearts hardened." His head dropped further, and he whispered, "I never realized how much I hurt you." I reached out, placing my hand over his. "Son, I forgave you the day you were born. But you had to see it for yourself." He looked up, eyes wide, searching mine for a trace of anger, a flicker of resentment. There was none. Just love. Just understanding. "I don't want to lose you," he said, voice trembling. I need you back inside." I shook my head gently. "Not yet," I said. "Not until I know you truly see me, not the house, not the furniture, not what you think you own, but me." "You see me, Marcus?" He nodded, tears slipping freely. "I see you. I see everything. I swear, Mama, I see you now." That night, the tension in the house had shifted. Tasha was silent, a tight line pressed across her lips. I didn't ask her to leave, that would have been cruel. But I knew she understood. The boy she married had finally come home to his mother's heart, and nothing else could come before that. I stayed in the garage for one more night, but this time it was different. I felt a sense of peace, fragile but real. The man I raised had finally faced himself. He had finally seen the sacrifices, the love, the patience that had carried him this far. The next morning, Marcus knocked on the garage door again. I opened it, and he stood there holding a small bouquet of flowers, awkward but sincere. "I'm sorry," he said simply, offering them to me. I took them, smelling the faint hint of spring, and smiled. "Thank you, baby." He swallowed hard. Can I fix things? Bring you back inside?" I hesitated, letting the silence stretch for a moment, a quiet, meaningful pause. Then I nodded. "Yes, come inside. But know this, forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It just lets love grow again." We walked to the front door together, his hand brushing against mine, tentative but real. And for the first time in months, the house felt like home again, not because of walls or furniture, but because Marcus had finally remembered what family really means. Inside, I watched him sit at the table, hesitant, careful, like a man learning to be human again. I looked around at the familiar rooms, the memories embedded in every corner, and realized that the house I had bought to heal us had done more than I imagined. It had forced us to see each other. It had forced a son to see his mother. And sometimes, that's all it takes for a family to begin again. The morning light streamed through the curtains, soft and forgiving, like a gentle reminder that some wounds do heal if you give them time. The house smelled different now, less tension, more quiet warmth. Marcus moved through the kitchen, careful, tentative, but there was a softness in his eyes that hadn't been there before. I sat at the table, the old oak that had seen birthdays, homework, laughter, and tears, and I watched him. A son who had once looked at me with indifference now looked with understanding. And in that moment, I realized, this house, these walls, these rooms, they never made a home. Love did. Seeing each other. Recognizing sacrifice. Offering grace. Marcus placed a cup of coffee in front of me, and I smiled. "Thank you, baby," I said softly. He nodded, glancing at the window where the sun cut across the hardwood floor. "I'm sorry, M.A.E, for everything. For pushing you out. For forgetting who you are." I reached for his hand across the table. "I already forgave you the day you were born," I said, my voice steady. "But you had to learn to see me. And now, you have." He smiled, a small, fragile thing, like sunlight through glass. "I see you, M.A.E. Truly see you. I won't forget this lesson." We spent the morning in quiet together, the kind of quiet that's not empty but full of understanding. I walked through the rooms, touching the walls lightly, remembering Charles, remembering the life we built together, remembering the love we had poured into every corner. And I realized that no inheritance, no house, no brick or beam could ever carry what we truly needed. Home wasn't about ownership or walls. Home was about the heart. And love could exist anywhere, in a garage, in a small kitchen, in laughter, in tears, in apologies and forgiveness. I thought about all the nights I'd cried on that cold floor, all the mornings I'd brewed coffee alone, all the evenings I'd listened to Marcus's laughter from afar. And I smiled. Because even in the darkest hours, I had learned something precious. Strength comes from love, patience, and the courage to stay soft, even when the world doesn't deserve it. Later that evening, we sat together as a family, Marcus, Tasha, little Nia, and me. We didn't need grand gestures. We didn't need to speak too much. Just presence. Just acknowledgement. And that was enough. I looked at Marcus and said softly, "Remember, son, walls can't hold love. Only hearts can." And today, I think we've all remembered that. He nodded. "I will never forget again, M.A.E. I promise." As the sun set and the house grew quiet, I reflected on everything that had happened. Betrayal, pain, hurt, all of it had led to this moment. It had taught me that sometimes losing your place in a house reminds you where love truly belongs. Not in rooms, not in money, not in possessions, but in hearts. And as I closed my eyes that night, I whispered a quiet prayer of gratitude. For resilience. For understanding. For the chance to begin again. Because home isn't just a building. Home is the space where love survives, even after the coldest betrayal. Home is forgiveness. Home is hope. Sometimes, losing your place in a house is the only way to find where your heart truly belongs.